Good day, ladies and gentlemen, to the Strong Ambition Podcast. I'm your host, Rylan Crawley, and I'm here to dive into what makes people ambitious and live a more ambitious life. And today I have a wonderful guest for this. This is Lucas Root, who himself also helps individuals live a more productive life. He himself started as a worker on Wall Street. So he was into trades and he was into helping mergers, and he found himself just working harder and harder hours until he realized he needed to make a shift. He needed to make his life more optimal. And over the course of his own evolution, he even found a new way to create a new business venture into helping businesses create the best productivity that they can. So today we dive into what it is to live a more optimal, productive life that is healthy. And so this is a great conversation, and I think there's a lot everyone can learn from. So without further ado, here is Lucas Root. Good day, Lucas. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm great, thank you. How are you, Rylan?
I'm not too shabby, man. I'm not too shabby. So how's things been going for you these days? Are you quite busy, pretty steady despite COVID?
Actually, maybe I'm quite busy because of COVID. You know what we're about to talk about, so I don't want to give it away too soon. But COVID has really ramped up people's interest in what it is that I have to talk about, and it's been great.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, that's what put me into my business as well. You know, just the necessity of the online. The word of 2020 was pivot, right? So how you had to pivot in some way, and it opens up a lot of doors. You know, it was the good side of ugly that came out of this. So, but you know, I'd like to get a bit more of a background on you. I'm always interested in someone's story, how they got to where they are, and I'd love for the listeners to hear more about you and kind of where you started, humble beginnings, anything like that, and kind of tell us what led you into the field that you're in now.
Awesome. So excited. So I followed the standard career path that everybody else has and thought I was doing the right thing. I went to college, got a degree, got a good job. Wall Street, by the way, for people who are wondering what a good job means. In hindsight, there are lots of good jobs, but that's the one I went after. I spent 17 years on Wall Street, and I'm married. My wife sat down with me over our anniversary dinner in 2014, so 7 years ago now. And she looked across the table, and with all the love in her eyes, we are still married. She said, "You look like death." And there's a backstory to that. Part of it is I was letting my job kill me, and I really was. It's 100% my fault. People will take from you what you give them, and you can choose to give less than you do, or you can choose to give more than you do, right? And without realizing it, I was choosing to give way too much. I worked on Wall Street. I was the operations strategist behind mergers and acquisitions. At the same time, I was starting businesses, building myself up to become who I am today. And in hindsight, again, I don't look at that roadmap as a bad thing. But maybe I gave too much. Maybe I did say yes too often. Maybe I showed up to the office too early and left too late. Maybe I should have been more thoughtful about the impact I was having on my life.
Yeah, that's a real powerful perception to have, right? Because we all get caught up in where's our career. We're always like, there's some of the, like you say, the traditional, you went to Wall Street, but people say, find your job that's secure, make sure it has a pension, make sure that you're going to bring in money and start a family and provide for them and then retire. And that story, yes, like, I mean, some people can live that story great, but the true, like you say, you give too much to it almost, and that doesn't describe the path and the journey of the individual, right? Mm-hmm. And so because you're almost giving into this narrative of this is where I'm supposed to be, so any things that happen along the way, well, I'm supposed to do this, where does the enjoyment come, right? And then it's interesting that you had that moment with your wife that it just took too much. So were you running like 15-hour days, 7 days a week kind of thing? And so was that kind of your epiphany moment to make a transition?
That was it. That was it right there. It wasn't right away. I didn't walk into work the next day and quit my job and go take a giant deuce on my boss's desk. Like I didn't pull one of those. um, but yeah, that was the epiphany moment. And my wife and I, we had a long conversation over that dinner. We talked about what our plans for the future could look like. What are our options? How do we make this happen? And over the course of the next year, we actually did take steps. We started building the right things. I had businesses. I'd been doing businesses on the side for a long time. So it took some intent to put in place the right things to catch me when I took that leap. But we did it.
Well, that's a real moment to cherish, in the fact that you got to really pour it all out right there. And it's really interesting how we can go through what I call micro traumas of gunpowder. And so we basically, you get, it's micro trauma, so you're very adapt to it. It's like, yeah, you just kind of like, I can handle that, I can handle it. But what I see it as is it's actually putting a little bit of gunpowder in you. And in one day you're going to blow up, and it could be blowing up in a way that I can't take this anymore, I need to change it, blow up, and it actually ruins you in a negative way, whether that leads to a heart attack or mental breakdown or something like that. But what you needed to light your fire was those words from your wife that day, that moment, that time. Someone asked you something a day or so before, wouldn't matter, but that was just the right moment, right amount and stress. And I think that's very potent. So that's such a powerful story. So what was your transition like? How did you try to make that pivot at that point in your life to slowly break away from this chained life of long work hours?
Yeah. Number one, and not everyone's going to have the same story as me, and I 100% get that. But number one, I told my management team right up front. I did walk in the next day and make changes. It wasn't to quit. I said, I'm giving you a year's notice, and I've done this before. It's every single time it's been met with the same response, like, yeah, okay, thanks, Lucas, gotcha, whatever. I've done it 3 times in my career. I gave really long notices. Right after my wedding was the first time I gave 9 months notice. Just letting you know, 9 months from now, I'm going to quit. Start making plans. And they were like, what? Yeah, okay. And the last time that I did that was that time in 2014, when I said, a year from now, I'm out. And I did it. I made plans. I put steps in place. And you asked, what did I do? So I took a look at all the businesses that I had started and all the businesses that actually could be up and ready to catch me when I take that leap a year from then. I started several real estate businesses. I started a community building business. And I realized that none of them were ready. They were all profitable hobbies, but they weren't ready to scale into something that could catch me. They weren't ready to turn into a real business. And so I said, all right, these are all out. I got to look at something else. What do I have to bring the world? If you've heard this before, your audience has heard this before. If you want to make a lot of money, you got to create a lot of value. What am I doing that creates a lot of value? Now, Wall Street was paying me well, so somebody thought that I was really valuable. So I sat down, I mapped out exactly what are the things that I'm doing in Wall Street that brings a lot of value, that makes it worth it for somebody to pay me a lot of money. All right, this is cool. Let's see what this does. And so I basically hung up a shingle as a consultant, and I said, here's what I do. Come buy from me. Crickets. Nobody shows up. You know this. Your audience knows this. Nobody shows up when you're like, oh, I'm ready. You're all ready, right? No. But that exercise was so valuable to me, right? Number one, just being ready and standing on my own 2 feet as I'm ready to accept business. I'm ready to accept a sale. I'm ready for somebody to come to me and say, I want what you're selling. And before that moment, I wasn't really ready. I had businesses, people could buy from them, but I wasn't ready for people to come to me and say, I'm ready for you to sell to me. I'm ready to buy what you have to sell. And that was a really big affirmation moment. Like, I've done it this time. I believe in it. Now, I had to spend the next 9 months trying to figure out how to get people to show up, how to get people to say, I want what you have to sell. I'm interested. Let's talk. And in hindsight, I got lucky. I reached out to luck is opportunity meets preparation, right? Number one, I was prepared. I hung the shingle up. I was ready to sell something. And number two, I had a network that wasn't primed, but they were a network. They were people willing to answer the call. So I just started dialing phone, not cold calls. These are people who know me, who love me to the degree they know me, right? So I started dialing the phone, and I made 10 calls a day for 9 months. Huge number of calls. 10 calls a day for 9 months. And finally, 10 calls a day for 9 months, one person said, you know what? I got something for you. And this piece of artwork over my shoulder, for those of you who can't see, is a recent piece of artwork from the Pokemon Company. So it was a friend of mine at the Pokemon Company who said, you know what? I got something for you. Now, I didn't know why, but they were going through a once in a lifetime event. They'd never done it before. They have not done this since, where the executive team was calling in every single person who could do strategy in their network, every single one. And I was one of them. And again, how would I have known if I wasn't calling? He didn't find me. I found him. I mean, he was a friend of mine. He answered the phone. He was already in my network, but he didn't reach out. I reached out. And I went in and I pitched them strategies. Now, I had some preparation. I did 100 hours of work putting together, but I pitched them some strategies based on one idea for them. And this is happening to your audience too, for the people who are willing to look for it. The one idea was, we, the Pokemon Company, and this is 6 years ago, have just gotten to the end of a big project that when it launches is going to be really, really, really profitable. And we need to do something with that money. We can either pay it to ourselves, and that's on the table, or we can invest it and grow the company even more. There are companies going through this all the time. I was lucky the Pokemon Company called me. I was lucky they let me come in and pitch. I was lucky that they said yes. Again, luck is preparation meets opportunity. I was lucky that they loved some of my ideas. But your audience has people going through this all the time. Small companies that just hit their first $1 million in revenue, and they're ecstatic that they're going to get another 2 million this year, and they don't know what to do with it. Medium-sized companies that have just hit 10 million in revenue, or 20 or 30 million, and they're growing at 100% per year, which means next year they're going to be at 60 million. It's happening all the time.
Right. So your main niche from, I just got to say, actually, your story is incredible when you talk about cold calls. Just from my business, I DM cold, and I've had to deal with just dry sale leads, and it's worse than being single. It's like in a bar of models that don't want to talk to you, because it's like you're always trying to come in with the same attitude, but every single time it can get harder and harder. But for you to do that for so long, that takes some real core belief in what you're doing. So I think that's incredible. I'm just really curious what, like you said, 10 calls a day for 10 months, just every day cold calling different places. What were some of the real hard parts, and how'd you get through them?
Yeah. It wasn't really cold calling, just to be clear. It was people in my network. So it was warm calling.
Right. Okay. I see.
So, these are people who know me. These are people who answer the phone. Like, I didn't get people cursing me out. So right. There's cold call stuff that happens that in that round of sales, I didn't have to go through.
Mm-hmm. I see.
And 10 calls a day, if you don't have a full-time job that's already paying you, is very small. For those of you who are in the process of launching your own thing, If you have a full-time job and you're doing your 10 calls in the mornings before you leave, in the evenings when you get home, 10 calls a day is good. If you don't have a full-time job, 10 calls a day is piss poor. You should be doing 10 calls an hour.
Yeah. Push those numbers up for sure. Yeah. And so was it just demoralizing, having to go that long, even though there were warm calls to try to get things going?
Yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard. It was almost a reversal of that affirmation moment when I was like, I'm ready now. And I could see how for other people it would be, where they're just like, I'm done. I wasn't ready. I didn't do something right. There's something wrong with my content. There's something wrong with my profile. Like it can't be me. It's not you. It's not you. Cold calls are 1 to 3% hit rate, but you don't know what number you're on. You don't know where your successes are going to happen. 1 to 3% could mean that you have to make 400 calls, and then you're going to get 10 yeses in a row.
Yeah, totally. I do really appreciate preparation meets opportunity for luck, because something I always preach to people that it does fall on probability, right? But you improve your probability by being prepared, by putting in your effort, putting in your first step. And I don't think it's wrong to say luck even at the end of that, because there are individuals that do all of the things that you're doing and don't land anything, and they fall short because they probably give up, and they have the exact kind of reflection that you had. And I think this is a very important mindset I like to just point out, because it's a huge part for the Strong Ambition podcast. Is just, so many times when I was running my boot camp, and that's where I started with my very first brand. It's called TTF, and I just knew I wanted my own brand. I wanted to do my own. And there were so many days where I had one person, two people, and if I had 5 or 6 in a room, I was pumped. But these really slow days were so hard because this is on a long day. And I remember hearing a voice in my head say right before I went into one, and it was like, maybe this isn't right. Maybe we should just find business to work for. Then another very powerful voice came over top of that and said, nah, that's what everyone else thinks, and that's why they quit. You're on the right path. Keep going. And it was just that was one of my epiphany moments. That was one of my real true moments of character. And that both those voices still go back and forth, to this day, but the latter is a lot more dominant and clearly seeing the path. But like you pointed something out there that I'm really trying to get to is, even though it's 3%, that doesn't mean it takes 100 to get 3. You actually restart that probability every single time you start a new call. So it might take 400, and then you say you get 3, 4, 5, 6 in a row. And on top of that, every single time you do a rep, you should be getting better at it, right? Every single time you get on a call, you should be trying to get better at it. So was that kind of part of your evolution too? Do you feel like as you were doing these 10 months of calling, you were starting to see yourself understand it better? Was there some personal growth within that?
Oh, hell yeah. Pardon the language, big time. I love scripts because they give you an idea of how to approach a conversation, but I'm horrible at following them. To me, writing a script is about having the right framework. And then inside that framework, I'm going to ad lib. It's just how I do it. But each call I make, I go back to the script and I make some edits. I'm like, this is what I did. This is how it worked. These are the things that I did, and these are the things I didn't do. Here's where the person paid attention. I take a little note. And again, the script isn't for me to follow. It's a framework. It's kind of like a concise living notepad of what's working, right? So each and every single call, I go back and I edit the script a little bit, which is updating that notepad. And as that script got finer, sometimes it got smaller. I take pieces out. Like, this is a piece that nobody ever said, ooh, that's awesome. Like, nobody ever got chills. Nobody ever was like, tell me more about that ever. So this probably can come out. Sometimes it got longer. Here's a little piece where every single person's like, tell me more. So I should think about that more, write about it more, talk about it more, get deeper and detailed. And that process, 10 months of 10 calls a day is 1,000 calls. That process allowed me to really get deep into exactly what it is that I wanted to be offering. Now, again, I was still full-time employed on Wall Street, so I was accepting a sale, but I hadn't actually sold anything yet. So I didn't really know what I was available to sell. I just knew what I thought I was available to sell. And that process of trying to sell it really helped me hone in on what it was within me that these conversations are interesting. The potential prospects are interested in, they want to listen to, they want to hear more about. Maybe, interesting idea, maybe if I hadn't done, let's say it was 8 months of calls before I got on the phone with Pokemon, they wouldn't have been ready to hear the message that I started with. I wouldn't have been ready to deliver the message they needed to hear.
I fully agree, and that's why I think it's so important to think about all those things, and to think that's why I love hearing these trials and tribulations that people go through, because it's all the reps you put in before are there for a reason. And you, even when you look back at a sale that you think you should have had, okay, maybe you should have had it, or maybe it was not the right person or time, but then now it's a lesson. It's not a failure, it's always a lesson. So you take back all that feedback, and I love how you depict that. It's like, hey, if I had one good sell before that might have been a different conversation altogether. So I think that's great. So you had I like to keep going down this story, this journey of yours. I think it's really cool. So you have your first sale, and then and I think this is where I know you, as an entrepreneur, you think, okay, I figured it out, and it's not. No, that's just your first win, and that's literally your first baby step of many baby steps. So what were the steps like after that, evolving your company?
Yeah. So one, when I went in and pitched them a whole bunch of ideas, that was for them. That didn't actually come out of my capacity to serve. It was more out of my understanding of what it is that they might need. And again, they loved it. And so they hired me. But they hired me as a very part-time consultant, like $2,000 a month, very part-time. So I was like, I've got a future. This is going to work. $2,000 a month does not pay my bills. That doesn't get me there. Like, now that I've got an idea of what's going to get me in the door, now I need to make another 400 or 500 calls and get other people to say yes. And so that's what I did. And I had a pretty honed approach, not a script, right? The script for me is just to maintain the framework. So I had a honed approach. And over the next 400 or 500 calls, I got 5 people to say yes instead of just 1. But that still, and you know this, that still was just the beginning. Now I had clients and I started serving them, and I was like, oh, what you need is not the same thing as what I thought I was bringing to you.
Yeah. It's very interesting when you go through that evolution of when you get a break, and then you think it's your big break, and you realize it's not, and you realize it's a step. that's step by step. And it could be first time I was trying to launch that boot camp, I thought, okay, once I tell people about it, people fly in. No, and it was inch by inch by inch for years. And even I don't even look at one big break. I look at many moments that made an impact, but it's this constant pressure that you apply to your ambition, to where you want to go. That's actually the most important factor, right? Is like, as long as you're pushing forward, you will find the path that's right for you. You just got to keep that as unoriginal as it sounds. It's keep pressure on trying to find the opportunity, trying to push ahead. So I really love that you're going through all these steps, and that kind of evolution of character is really important. And not to mention, when you're looking at this, and whenever it has to do with a client-based thing, it's like, yeah, they might come in for a bit and then you hopefully deliver. But even if you do deliver, people back away. And so it's still this revolving door when you have a business. So what was it like for the next short while to continue to push forward your business to evolve to where it is?
Um, Once I got in the door, adjusting, being able to pivot, being able to find the value, and that's the big key, right? Is to deliver. You want to make a lot of money, you have to deliver a lot of value. And I had to figure out how to deliver the value that these companies were interested in. Because, when I was on Wall Street, I was doing mergers. There's not a lot of companies that are interested in hiring an external consultant to help them merge with another company. Like, that's unlike all those people in your network that are connected to, a really strong growing company that's pounding through 100% growth per year. And that's happening. There are not a lot of companies that are interested in mergers that are trying to stitch together two very different businesses in the same market, trying to figure out which pieces of those businesses are the best, trying to put them together. Like, that was what I was doing on Wall Street. That was the value I was bringing to Wall Street. That's what I thought these other companies wanted. It's not. So figuring out how to continue to bring value, drive that value, meet the needs of those clients, that was step one. Step two for me was figuring out how to make sure that I stay strong, productive, capable, focused. How to keep my head on my shoulders and not blow up to 500 pounds. And I'm not joking, like, that really is possible. um, and that turned into the thing that blew up when COVID hit. The thing that turned into an enormous amount of value a year and a half ago for me was how to be extremely productive on a shoestring time budget.
Right. Yeah. And that's this day and age. This day and age is about how fast and efficient we can be, how much can we jam into a day, and the word busy is everyone's life, right? And my friend humbled me over 10 years ago. He's like, everyone's busy. It's like, don't use it, and I actually like got what he said. I was like, yeah, it's like a useless word in
Yep.
some sense. And I also feel like it has a bit of a negative connotation to it, right? It's like or a badge of honor. It's a bit of both. So it can either be busy, as in, I'm overwhelmed, and just got too much on the go. So that's kind of the negative end of it. But then some people will, and I used to be the one who would wear it as a badge of honor, who would say, better than busy than bored, right? And so you fill that 15-hour work clock and you wear it as a badge of honor, but you know that you're just burning candles at both ends. And I luckily figured it out before it got too late. But what were some really evolutions in this company? So what can you tell us about this concept that you help businesses with?
Yeah. So first, start with what you know. Everybody knows not everybody, but almost everybody knows the corporate workday. So if you're going to build a framework, just like when I was cold calling, and I wrote that script not so that I could read through the script, but because it was a framework inside which I was doing ad lib, inside which I was free flowing. That framework contained, or that script contained the framework, right? So if you're going to build a framework that creates positive productivity for you in your world, start with what you know. Just like I did with my script. I started with what I know. I did 1,000 reps calling 1,000 people over 10 months, and I fine-tuned that script. Now start with your day from the perspective that you know your day. So what does everybody do in the morning? They get up, they go to the bathroom, they take a shower, they shave, they brush their teeth, they make some coffee, they eat some breakfast. Now start with your corporate workday, because many of us are still home, but we haven't rebuilt our framework. So we had the corporate workday. Now we're home and we realize that we're not as productive, but we don't know why. After you've finished with your morning stuff, breakfast, say goodbye to your, in my case, wife, head out the door. You go for a walk. It's not intentional, right? You didn't go out to go for a walk, but you go for a walk. You walk to your car, you walk to your bus stop, you walk to your train. You relax and you engross your mind in something that builds you up, hopefully. But But in any case, you're engrossing your mind. For me, I was sitting on the bus or sitting on the train when I was in New York City, either reading or listening to podcasts. So my mind was focused on things that are building me up. I get out of the train, I go for another walk. So how do I rebuild a framework that supports me the same way that framework did? Start with what you know. Well, that's simple. I get up, I do my morning routine, I go out for a walk. I was doing that anyway. I can do that here. I come back from the walk. I put my mind into something that builds me up. So I get out a book and I read, but it's not fiction. This isn't popcorn reading. This is something that builds me up, something that makes me better, just like I used to do when I was in the city. When I'm done reading, I go do something else that's physically active, stretching maybe, or a little bit of yoga or another walk. It worked for me when I was in New York City. I can do this when I'm at home. Start with what you know. Now, next, think about your workday in terms of chunks. I love chunks. Most people do 2 hours of work and then they take a coffee break. Then they do 2 hours of work and then they take a lunch break. And then they do 2 hours of work and then they take a coffee break. And then they do 2 hours of work and then they go home. That's what most people chunk their workday while they're in the office. Why can't we do the same thing when we're home? You just got back from your walk, you put on your collared shirt, you sit down at your desk, do 2 hours of work, get up. We didn't drink coffee at our desk when we were in the office. We went out to the coffee shop, get up, go for a short walk, get a coffee, enjoy the coffee, spend some time enjoying the coffee, go for another short walk, sit down at your desk, do another 2 hours of work, get up, go for a walk, eat lunch. Don't eat at your desk. You didn't do that when you were in your office. You ate at the bodega, you ate at the restaurant, you ate in the cafeteria. So get up, go for a walk, eat lunch away from your desk, go for another walk, come back to your desk, do 2 hours of work, get up, go for a walk, drink some coffee, go for a walk, come back to your desk, do 2 hours of work. End of the day comes. Same thing as the beginning of the day. Get up, go for a walk, because that's what you did. You walked to your car, you walked to your train. When you come back, take off your collared shirt. Now you're in home mode. You've gotten rid of all of the work thoughts. You're not carrying your work home with you. Even though you work from your home office, you're not bringing your work home from you, because it was actually the go for a walk and take off your work clothes thing that took off those work ideas and cleared your mind.
I like that so much. Just the word walk gets me fired up. You know, I've been in the fitness industry a long time, and it took me decades to recognize how the effect of simple walks are. You know, to me, it seemed initially too boring and like it wasn't going to burn enough calories. But the simple fact is, it does make you significantly active when you do those little implementations that are so inherently easy that's why I don't classify it as exercise. It's non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is a way to burn calories. It is just embedded into your day. It is your activity. It's the way you spend your life. It's very similar to how I run my day. I've ever since COVID and I do my online training, it's been a matter of, you know, I don't really leave my apartment as much. And I miss that. I miss being able to walk around a gym. So I intentionally go for walks, and just the same idea, this framework of something to build you up mentally, get in that headspace. I love how you talk about, you know, take a break, you know, for lunch away from your work area. It's so important. Go for walks after, take breaks after. Like, I love how you used to walk to the coffee shop, like just have a coffee and get those breaks and still embed this in your nature. And right there, that takes care of so many health problems that are just being like, we already have a sedentary world. We already have this, we're already against the grain. And then COVID hit. So you had triple the reasons to not do anything. And the thing that amazed me was the walk from your building, house, whatever, to your car, from your parkade to your place of employment, and you double that. That right there is a huge impact on your activity. And if you're already someone who doesn't train, this is a problem. So I love that you implement these things. So what kind of feedback and response have you had from clients utilizing this?
They absolutely love it. They're like, I don't know why I didn't think of this myself. It's so simple. It's based on stuff we know. This is crazy. and crazy in a good way. Like, wow, it's amazing. And start from what you know. Everybody used to do this when they had a corporate job, whether you were a baker and your corporate job started at 4 a.m., right? Or you're a trainer and maybe your corporate job starts at 2 p.m. Everybody used to do this. Get up, go for a walk, get on your mode of transportation, whether it's your car or train, go for another walk to get to your employment. That's what we did. And when we take that away, thermogenesis goes away, right? We're not being active, we're not turning our body on, but we're also not turning our brain on. Like, most people don't think about this, but your brain uses 25% of your calories. 25% of your calories. You need to pump your blood to get that energy up into your brain. You need to move, you need to fill that oxygenated, energized blood and push it up into your head. Like, otherwise you're going to be running your brain on a deficit, even if your body is not.
Yeah, and it just, like you said, the whole turning it on thing is so important. Creating an environment is so impactful to your behavior. It could be as simple as just like in the environment. I like how you talk about, take your collar off, change your shirt. It's like taking off your work shoes. I know when I did construction, the moment you took off your work boots is like the nicest feeling. And so to be able to leave that at home is so important. I had so many people complain about, working out at home is so hard. I'm like, I get it. This is your environment to not do work. This is your environment to be calm. And so when you actually don't have a choice but to do some workout at home, it seems easier to get distracted. It doesn't feel like you're in that environment. Why do people go to libraries? To read. It's quiet. Why, you go to the gym and you hear that iron clinking and the guy grunting and someone going all out on the treadmill. You're in that work environment. And then when you're at home, to do work at home and to stay into your work mindset is quite challenging. It really is. And so to be able to set up your environment so that you can delegate those two different mindsets, because even as you say, whether it's getting your brain turned on to start your day, but I love how you implemented that. Take off your work shirt. Make sure you now know you're at home and have that next level of, okay, let's mentally relax, because then people can bring that anxiety even more into that home place, which should be, not the workplace, right? So I'm curious then. So is there any other kind of tactics you get people to implement outside of just the walks and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So you can take this so far. Once you've started messing around, you can move things around. Like, am I more productive if I take my shower as soon as I wake up? Or am I more productive if I wait for 2 hours and take my shower then? Am I more productive if I eat first thing in the morning? Or am I more productive if I don't eat until noon? Maybe it's a different kind of productivity. Maybe what I want the kind of productivity that is maximized when I'm fasting in the morning, and I don't want that productivity in the afternoon. But I'm still productive in the afternoon, but it's a different kind of productivity. What does that mean? It could be you're doing administrative tasks when you're in the morning, because when you're fasted, your body is in a slightly stressed state. Is that a bad thing? No, coffee stresses you too. It's a very minor stress, and that very minor stress helps you get focused on things like answering emails or, putting together your spreadsheets. It's not as useful for things that are really, really creative, like painting or writing copy for your blog. Now, maybe the best time for you to do your copy for your blog is first thing in the morning when you get up. Yes, you're still fasted, but it's not an extended fast. So it's a good time for you to do that. Maybe the best time for you to do that is mid-afternoon, after your body has taken in, let's say you fast until noon. So it's breakfast at noon. Then you start writing your copy at 1 or 1:30, because you're out of that stress state. The coffee has, your body has processed the caffeine, so you're not stressed from the caffeine. Your body has processed the fact that it's got food, so you're not stressed about eating. And now you can be free and open in that moment to flow, right? all of these things, and I know that I just dropped a ton of stuff on the table, and people are going to be like, oh crap, what do I pick up? Well, start with what you know. Start with that simple morning routine that got you to your corporate job at 9 a.m. every day, and have that continue to get you to your job here at your work from home desk every day. Same routine. Get up, brush your teeth, go for a walk, get to your desk, put on your collared shirt, do your work. And all of the other stuff that I just dropped, the little bits of fine-tuned tweaking, that doesn't take you to 80%. That takes you from 80% to 100%. That levels you up for just the right kinds of activities, like working out.
Yeah, yeah. I like that depiction there. I love how you implemented the conversation around windowed eating and fasting. I think it does, it's a little muddled in the research as far as how beneficial it is, but I think people need to look at it as a tool. And it's not necessarily for everyone, but those who have it and have that effect. So, the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight gets a little bit, it's a spectrum, right? It's not like, oh my goodness, I'm in fight or flight and I just didn't eat. It's like, no, it's like, it's a little bit turned on because your body is recognizing what kind of a state it's in. And so then, I do find the same, like if I'm not thinking about food, and bear in mind, this is also a guy 2 years ago, if you told me that I was going to skip breakfast, forget about it, hangry and all that stuff. And then I discovered through just trying different dietary approaches and stuff like that, that you can actually control your appetite. And I love not thinking about food all morning. I love just getting in my flow state for work, very similar to all those things. And then I do find very similar where it's like, when you're in that kind of aroused state from caffeine, you've had your sleep, so you're probably feeling a little bit more spiked from getting good rest. So you have a cognitive state of will, alertness, and everything. And, talk about a min task, basically the shit you don't want to do get done. And so that way that all that cognitive energy is there and input it. Well, what's the task that we can put later on? The things that you flow in, the things that take more intrinsic motivation. And so that's why when you said that's writing copy and doing more creative work makes so much sense, right? And that's exactly how I do it, because at that point, whether it's talking to conversation with clients or trying to write things, it's not something I'm going to look at the clock for, it's something that I'm going to be immersed in my task. I don't need to run off of adrenaline, and it'll flow for me. But the one thing that, even with the listeners that you said, they can go so many different ways. What you had said is so important for people to appreciate is you got to start with what you know, right? You always got to start there. And if you want to change something, you can try it. And it may not work for you. That's not even a clear answer, but that's kind of the truth of the matter, right? I have clients that, like, I'll even say, I think windowed eating, intermittent fasting might be good for you. But if they're not receptive to even dreaming this concept, then I'm like, okay, we're not doing it. Because like, you love breakfast. So that fucking matters more, right? Like, it matters so much more of what what you value, what you appreciate with dietary habits and how it's going to implement your life. So I think that's, I love how you come at both angles of it. I do appreciate that. So what other kind of strategies do you have as far as, implementing good routines in your life?
So again, keeping in mind, start with what you know, make sure that you implement your 80% and keep it there. B, we are an N=1 experiment. And that's kind of what you and I both just stated and reiterated. Like, we are an N=1 experiment. Try something, see how it works. If it works, keep doing it. If it doesn't work, get rid of it. Try something else, see how it works, keep going. Number 3, all of your senses impact your capacity to be productive in any particular activity. And this is really important. When I'm sleeping, I want to be productive while I'm sleeping. When I'm resting and spending quality time with my wife, I want to be productive in that quality time with my wife. I want to be focused and present. I want to be listening. I want to be capable of having a conversation with her. I want to watch that movie with her and be able to have a conversation with her about it afterwards, right? That's productivity for that activity. when I'm working out. I want to be productive in my working out. I want to be focused. I want to be pumping iron. I want my muscles to be burning, right? Some of the time that's not the goal, but whatever the goal is, like we want to be productive in the activity. So when you're moving into an activity, know what you want to accomplish. That doesn't mean you know what you will accomplish, but know what you want to accomplish. Know what you're working towards, because that's how you define productivity for that activity, for that block of time. And that's how you approach it. Now back to the senses. It's crazy. It's crazy how much you can fine tune. The color light that you choose to use affects how focused you are. Not necessarily because the color light actually matters specifically to you, but because your body responds to specific inputs for specific activities. So if you're always sitting at your desk and you always have a blue shift light while you're working, don't put a blue shift light in your bedroom, because you've trained yourself to accept that that blue shift light, the daylight light, is work at work light. And so your body will try to respond to that when it's 9 p.m. and you're trying to go down to bed. Right? It doesn't, I'm not necessarily saying it really matters to have red light in your bedroom. What matters is that you change the inputs to match what's productive for the output that you want. If I want to sleep, I need different inputs than if I want to sit at my desk. I need different inputs than if I want to meditate. I need different inputs than if I want to work out. And that's why you're wearing an underarm sleeveless shirt right now, and I'm wearing a collared shirt, because these are productivity uniforms. It's an input. It's specific to the goal of the time that I'm spending.
Yeah, I really do like that kind of depiction there of as simple as the lighting in the fixtures and where you position yourself totally makes a difference. And especially over this last year where we're seeing the same walls again and again and again, if you don't create some sort of a mental shift from place to place, it can get kind of like prison-like, and I often would honestly, it was more so in the spring, I think, when a lot of us were getting real sick of COVID and things weren't quite opening up yet. I would routinely shift my workstation from in my bedroom to in the dining room and back and forth, just because I was getting so sick of it. But I like this idea and this, whole concept of creating different sensory, have a different light for different time of day. I think that makes sense. Oh yeah, and I have luckily the best job where I can always go for comfort. So I dress for comfort 99% of the time. But I do appreciate what you're talking to, because it is something that, it's a part of my uniform when I go to the gym. I'll be wearing the same stuff. I get pretty blessed with that, being a trainer, that what you can work out in and do a lot of exercise also feels great to do nothing in. It's the same kind of clothes, right? But yeah, I like that. So what are some kind of ideas, because this is a good on this track of things that people wouldn't think about? What are some things that people wouldn't think about that you would really encourage them to be like, this is a game changer?
Smell.
Yeah.
I mentioned that all of these inputs that we have for each of our productivity chunks, right? When we're trying to work, when we're trying to rest, when we're trying to sleep, they all have inputs. Light is an input, what you're wearing. So what you feel on your skin is an input. Smell is something nobody ever thinks about, but it really does matter. Think about the smell of your office. Think about the smell of your gym. Is it the same as the smell of your apartment? It's not, is it? It's weird how much that matters. Like, it matters a lot. So engineering the right smell for your office when you're at home could actually make enormous, like 10, 15, 20% difference in your productivity. It doesn't matter what the smell is, but it has to be unique to the work that you're doing, right? So your rest smell has to be different from your focused on email smell, has to be different from your writing content smell. Very cool idea, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. Because I always smell whatever my neighbors are cooking right now. Yeah. No, I like this idea. I think it's very interesting. And you've seen productivity increases in people when they do this?
Oh yeah. This one's one of those, just like you asked, like nobody would ever think of, and it's a big impact.
Fascinating. Have you seen research in line with this? Like, have they done any studies around this stuff?
No.
No. Yeah. But you've seen people compliment it and say that it works for them.
Yep. Yep. My clients, I'm not, I'm not doing the research. There's no blind study, but my clients, every one of them, they're like, holy crap, this made a huge difference.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. So on the whole concept of productivity habits, so I imagine based on what you talk about with walking and stuff like that, that you do encourage business owners and employees to stay active and to worry about nutrition. Um, this can be a hard sell, right? In a busy lifestyle. I know in a little bit here, I'm going to be pitching to a bunch of lawyers and a lawyer in a law firm, and I'm trying to think about how to speak to their language. So, how do you convey value? Because to me, it's like once you've been through something, it has value. It doesn't have value until you've been through it, or you've seen evidence that it works, and that evidence is specific to your belief system in some way, right? So you have to have faith for value, right? We have faith that money works because you hand it to something, you get something, it has value, right? That going to work has value because you get paid, you have the result, right? So when someone is in a business that they're all about productivity, they're about spending every single second to make money, they're exhausted from it, right? How do you create value for them or a belief system for them around exercise or dietary habits that we all know, and even if you tell them they know that it would, how do you convey it to them?
Mm-hmm. Anchor to an emotional experience. So ask them, are you familiar with the 2 p.m. slump? All of them are.
Yeah.
Have you ever not had it? And they'll think about it and they'll be like, well, it doesn't happen to me on Saturdays. Cool. What's different about Saturday? Because if you think about it, you're probably burning more energy on Saturdays than you do on Tuesdays. You're up, you're doing yard work, you're doing chores, you're playing with your kids, you're burning energy. If you're getting your 2 p.m. slump on Tuesdays and you're not getting it on Saturdays, then there's actually something about that movement that you're doing that actually keeps your brain going, keeps it fresh, keeps it strong, keeps it alive. Is that the way you want to feel every day? Or do you want to keep having your 2 p.m. slumps like you do Tuesdays?
I like that. Yeah, anchor to that value of, hey, it's what movement does. I had a client recently who was super busy in the summers and in the spring, and then in the fall they were saying, because there is a construction worker, and then in the fall he was saying, oh, I don't know, maybe it's the weather or something like that. I'm hungrier. I'm like, you were working all day in the spring and the summer, right? Did you have time to think about food? And he's like, no. You're not hungrier. You're just less occupied.
Yeah,
And
you're bored.
You're bored, right? And food is a great pastime. And so, and then on top of that, you're actually putting out less energy. So it's not an energy requirement thing. It's a perception of what you're doing with your time. And so I like that little mindset shift. Do you have any guiding principles that you give them around nutrition?
Yes, but that's not my focus.
Right.
But yes, in general, you should avoid things that stress your body unless the goal is to stress your body. So, for example, if you want to raise your body temperature, a great way to do that is to eat a habanero pepper. that will raise your body temperature. And when that's the goal, I think that's probably a really valuable tool. When that's not the goal, it's probably not a very valuable tool, because every time that you stress your body has to respond to that stressor. If you get punched in the shoulder, your body has to send nutrients and blood over there to deal with the fact that it got damaged. It'll heal. Our bodies are amazing at healing, but it has to deal with that damage. And the same thing goes with the food that we eat. If you eat things that cause stress, your body has to deal with the damage that was caused. So if that's the goal, more power to you. I drink coffee. I drink coffee until noon. I drink a lot of coffee every day. I like coffee. Caffeine is a stressor. And every time I put caffeine into my body has to deal with that. So when that's the goal, it's a useful tool. When it's not the goal, it's not a useful tool. So pay attention to the foods that cause stress to all humans and make sure that you limit those when being stressed by your food is not the goal.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's, make sure I really appreciate the tool conversation. I think it's so important to depict food as, what is its purpose? If you try to articulate it in a way of good and evil, bad and good, it gets super argumentative, and it also makes people feel morally like attached to their food decisions, which is
Yeah.
where cheat meals come out and it's like I'm a cheater. It's like you're not, there's no rules, right? And so it's very important to just depict food in a functional way. It's like, what's the probability it's going to help you, right? So I really appreciate that. I think that's a good language to use, and really good how you have this concept around making sure people see the value of it, because it is a hard sell, right? To these high productivity people. I'm still trying to sell my dad on strength training, and he's a farmer, so anytime not spent on the farm isn't making him money, right? So try to make that sell better and better each time. So this has been a great conversation. You gave us a lot of great tips here. I'm really curious about where's your business going. So tell us, you don't be afraid to tell us a bit more about it. Feel free to plug any information about it, where they can find you, and tell us what's the next chapter for you.
Love it. Thank you. So I've taken most of this and I put it together into a video training that you can get on my website, lucasroot.com. And people are starting to get a lot of value out of that. It's a couple hours of like really good video training. It's got transcripts. It's got questionnaires that you can go through. Like, it's full of awesome stuff and all the stuff that we just talked about in much more detail. And the reason that I did that, yes, I want to be able to impact more people faster and deeper and wider, but I also want to be able to start focusing on what's next for me. And what's next for me is something really cool. I think about this. It occurred to me that most people don't know what a community is. Most people have no idea what the difference between a group and a community is. And so I've started building a framework, just like I built a framework for productivity. I've started building a framework for community, so that we can understand whether you're in a group, a cult, a community, a family, what the difference is, and how to choose when it serves you, right? It's all about tools to me, how to choose when it serves you.
Well, that's awesome. I think that's, I would love to hear more about that when you work all that out, because to me, community is, it's the epitome of wealth to some degree. It's a huge part of it, or it's a good anchor to it, because you can't have true wealth unless it's shared, and unless you have a shared experience. And it's back when I was doing my first boot camp, what made that workout in the environment, everything was the community, was creating a community, and it kept me motivated. I would go in after long ass days, or start an early day after doing a long day, and have fun with a group, come in at the end of the day with another group and have fun, and just get revitalized by that community. And I think it's interesting you say that. I couldn't define it super well, but I know when I've been in one. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you know when you're in it, but you can't actually put words to it perfectly. So I really appreciate that. I think that's great. And all the best of luck to you. I think I'm excited to see how that turns out. I think you gave us some really great info to run off of here. So I appreciate all the time. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Thanks again to Lucas Root. I really did enjoy his perspective of some of these little simple time shift concepts, making sure that you block your day together as if you were walking to and from a place. And I really believe in this because this part of our life has been lost so much. And during the COVID lockdowns, it was even worse. And it was already an issue. And now it's an even bigger issue. So I'm glad that he's helping people realize these simple productivity habits, and especially his ideas of different senses, the idea of different lights, the idea of different smells. What a simple but brilliant mindset to help implement productivity in a home environment that you can shift to make more like work. I think that's quite brilliant. I'm going to try it myself. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and I'll leave some more information in the show notes for if you want to reach out to Lucas Root and find more information on his stuff. If you're looking for more information on my stuff, it's rqtrainingnutrition.com or on Instagram at rqtrainingnutrition. And don't hesitate to reach out for a call. I'm always here to optimize anyone's life in any way I can, or even just give some simple free advice. I'm always happy to do that. So other than that, don't forget that it's not about the pursuit of happiness. It's about the happiness within the pursuit.